I'd like to invite you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Our next item is approval of minutes for the regular meeting on October 24th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Bester.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. King. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. We'll move on to our general functions. Our first agenda item is staff, student, and community recognitions. Mr. Caruth.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. We have a number of recognitions this evening, and but we're going to begin first with a couple of special announcements. So I'm going to ask that Mrs. Brittany Matsushino come up and introduce her group. We just moved it out of the way because your group is large.
This on?
Yeah.
Okay. President Pratt, Superintendent Caruth, members of the board, it is my pleasure to be introducing Micah Mountain's Thunderbolt Show Choir. Please come forward. They are led by the illustrious Uncle Michelle.
Good evening. I'm Anka Michelle, and I'm Director of Choirs, Steel Drums, Marching Band, and Piano at Micah Mountain, and Steel Drums at Rincon Vista and Desert Sky. I'd like to introduce you to our Thunderbolt Show Choir. This is an amazing group of students that I'm really lucky to have. They are super talented, hardworking, and all of them are involved in many, many things at their school and with their churches. So they're very busy, but they're also very amazing people. We're singing 3 songs tonight that are 3 different genres. The first one is Happy Together, and it's about unrequited love. The singer wants his love interest to imagine how the world could be so very fine if they were together. The second song is Eu e Você, and it's a Brazilian ode to love, and it's about the powerful connection between 2 people. The literal translation is, I prefer just me and you. And the final song, Down by the Riverside, is a traditional spiritual, and it talks about hope, peace, and freedom.
I think about you day and night. It's only right to think about the girl you love and hold her tight. So happy together. Da, da, da. If I should call you up. So there we go. That's happy together. So happy together. I can see me loving nobody but you. For all my life. The skies will be blue. For all my life. The only one for you. We're so happy together. Together. Me and you and me, no matter how they toss the dice, it had to be. The only one for me is you, and you for me. So happy together. So Something together. Magkasalita para kung bemora. Que tem você. Salida para sempre demorar. Sempre sabe ser que tem você. Eu vou ser. I ain't gonna study, ain't gonna study, ain't gonna study, ain't gonna study, ain't gonna study. Ain't gonna study. Along my road down by. Don't study, don't study, don't study, don't study, don't study, don't study. Keep on studying, don't study, don't study. So does she. Gonna lay down my burdens on
Thank you, so, and students, before you go, we'd like to, we have something we'd like to give you. Right?
So I don't know if the other board members want to. So I wish I knew your names, but Isabella? Which one? Oh. There you go. Thanks so much for being here. Megan Brown. You guys want to shake hands? You can. Sophia Mooney. Sophia. Yeah. Izzy Branson. It's beautiful. Thank you. Caleb Muir. Thank you. Ben, I'm assuming that's you. Thank you. So much. Yes. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really beautiful.
Great, great. Thanks.
Thank you for being here. Loved it. Thank you. Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, sure. You guys want to flip around and we'll do a quick group photo?
Would you guys bracket the logos?
Get down on.
Get you guys in front.
You guys.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys do anything?
You don't get to hide behind anybody.
Just trying to squeeze it.
You're a smiler. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
There we go.
Smile or I'll pinch you.
1, 2, 3. Now 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Well, we have another group of students here. But I'm going to ask you to hold on just one moment because I'm going to bring up a couple of people to honor and maybe embarrass just slightly the leader of the school. If I could ask Mr. Joe Grothy and Mrs. Jan Grothy to come on up for a presentation to Sienega High School and Mrs. Kim Middleton.
Really, we have to follow that?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's tough. President Pratt, Superintendent Caruth, governing board members, thank you so much for this opportunity to really raise the flag of the school. Jan and I have been working with the school district since 2008. And, we work with all the schools in Southern Arizona. So when we have an opportunity to really raise the flag of a school for something positive they've done, we love to do it. This past summer, Kim and Tamla were at our National Renaissance Conference in Dallas, and Sienega High School was awarded the only school in the state of Arizona, the Johnson's Renaissance School with distinction, which is silver level, which is really amazing. And I just want to read from the press release that we had. The Johnson's Renaissance School of Distinction was created to help celebrate those schools that are making a positive impact on their school climate and culture through executed the Renaissance formula from Johnson's called to respect, recognize, to reward, to reinforce, to have relationships which equal results. Sienega High School does that each and every day. All of our schools in the Ville School District do that each and every day. Johnson's is honored to recognize our Renaissance schools of distinction. The passion and dedication of the educators and student leaders at Sienega are a driving force in building a culture of achievement, pride, and belonging. Seneca High School has put the Renaissance formula into action in order to drive measurable results in academic performance and student engagement, and also to create an environment where every student belongs, not just attends. And I think that also equates not only to students, but also to staff. These efforts show the true grit and commitment to student success. The School Distinction Award designation was achieved by, listen to this, just 36 schools across the country, and the only school in the state of Arizona across North America, and demonstrates the highest level of accomplishment. To reach this level, schools implemented strategies in 8 or more separate areas, and also described and documented their success through rigorous application process. Tamla Price took on Renaissance when it was starting to fade away, and she rebuilt it. And through the leadership of Kim Middleton, it was amazing to see it just a little spark to bring it back and be it where it was. I am just really proud. Jan and I are really proud. We do caps and gowns. That's what we do. But to really celebrate student success through culture and climate, this is what PBS is all about. This is what Vail School District is all about. So on behalf of Jostens and Jen and I, we present them with this banner, and so they can proudly hang it up.
Now they're going for the Platinum Award, so we're excited about that. So hopefully it'll continue on and spread around the other high schools and middle schools.
Yeah. You know, and the Jostens Renaissance is not just about high schools, it's about middle schools and elementary schools too. And having them there, and I can guarantee you this, they will probably never miss a conference.
Yeah.
Jan and I have to go there every year to get re-sparked, rejuvenated. And it's just a collaboration of ideas. And it's a very positive event. To see 2,000, over 2,000 to 3,000 students and educators from across the country come together to collaborate and share ideas is powerful. Now, we're excited because next year she's going to present and share the formula of success here at Vail. So thank you very much.
Thank you, both Joe and Jan, for making that presentation. Congratulations to Cienega. And while I just want to make a broader statement that we know that you work for Jostens, but we also claim you as Vail people, and know that you have been parents, proud parents of the Vail School District. So it's an honor to make that full circle connection as well. With that, after being so honored, Mrs. Middleton, you have some guests. Would you like to introduce your guests this evening? And you can move that over a little bit. We just squeezing folks in. Perfect. Thank you.
Is that good?
Yep.
President Pratt, Superintendent Caruth, and members of the governing board, I'm super excited to be here with you tonight to recognize some Cienega Copper Thunder Marching Band students who were invited to participate in the Macy's Day Parade next week. They're not going to sing for you, even though I tried to convince them to. They were very nervous and said no, they wouldn't do it. But the 3 students that I have with me tonight are Garrett Files, Austin Doty, and Hayden Tanksley. They have been working so hard, and I'm so very excited for them. They fly to New York City on Saturday and will be there through the Macy's Day Parade Thursday afternoon. So we just wanted to recognize them and their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Middleton. And congratulations to all of you. You have great time in New York. Next up is Mrs. Peggy Benson Runyon to do a quick special announcements and recognition regarding Make a Difference Day.
Good evening, President Pratt, members of the board, and Superintendent Caruth. I would like to take a moment to share some highlights from this year's Make a Difference Day, which was held on October 19th. Projects were completed across 16 school sites with over 900 volunteers from across our community, clocking in close to 3,000 volunteer hours in one Saturday morning. With several principals leading the way, projects included cleaning up and beautifying campuses, numerous painting projects, building a walking path, as well as rocking sites, as in literally moving a ton of rock. The success of the day was made possible through the collaboration of our local faith community and site coordinators across the district, inviting staff, students, families, and community members to support our schools in making a difference. I would like to specifically recognize George Maurer with the South Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as well as Tamara Muir with the Rincon Stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Their collective ability to connect with volunteers with sites is inspiring, and their heart for our community is tremendous. We couldn't do it without you. Appreciate you.
Couldn't do it without you.
I would also like to recognize Living Branch Church. And if you know Rob, he tries not to be recognized, but he should be. Additionally, I would like to recognize a few of our site coordinators who did a next level job of planning and organizing these projects, as well as connecting with volunteers so they knew that their service was valued. I would like to recognize Samantha Thomas at Cottonwood and Sophia Holton at Sycamore, who excelled at this. I would like to thank Sarah Bates, principal of Cottonwood, and the Cottonwood staff for once again hosting and supporting the community picnic. It was almost 1,000 people were there. And finally, I would like to thank Linda Kubiak and Chris Harms with Community Programs for always being there to support these events with encouragement and a much needed huge Costco run for water, picnic supplies, and snacks. So this day was truly amazing, and it truly exemplified where education is a community effort. So thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. We have a few other recognitions, Mr. Barger, followed by Mr. Breen.
Thank you, Mr. Caruth. President Pratt, members of the board, I'd like to start by recognizing our Spanish teacher, Erica Hermosillo. She has taken on a couple new tasks this year on our campus. She is our EL coordinator and our student council sponsor. And so she's dug in deep and putting in a lot of time and effort. And I want to recognize her work. She's making a difference on our campus. I'd like to also recognize first year school monitor, Nate Claridge, who has been covering, we're down a position, and he's really there. Every time we turn around, he's there picking up the pieces and then helping us out and going above and beyond. I want to recognize him. Also want to honor Tanya Conley, one of our 6th grade teachers. Not only is she our NJHS sponsor, and they're currently doing a food drive, but she's also running our PBIS program. She is coaching other teachers, and she's just all around there at every event we have, helping and being a positive influence. Also want to recognize 3rd grade teacher Josh Burke for creating the Boxer TV News. It's a weekly broadcast put on by 4th and 5th graders. He's also one of our TATs, our technology advisory team members on our campus, and always looking for ways to help technology find a new home in the classroom. Like to recognize Kim Roberts, who wears many hats on our campus. Kim is a reading specialist. She runs our student solutions team. She teaches ELP to our students. She teaches STEM, and she's also a cognitive coach and a literacy coach to several of our teachers, and just always someone we can go to for support. And finally, I just want to recognize Mario Balderrama, our assistant principal. Unfortunately, my mom passed away about 2 months ago, and I had to take some time off to be where I needed to be, and I did not have to worry about work. And that is just an immense relief for me personally when I was going through that, and to know that Mario could hold down the fort just really helped me get through what I needed to get through, and I just want to recognize him for being there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barger. Mr. Breen, followed by Mr. Campos.
Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the governing board. I have a few recognitions tonight. First, I'd like to recognize Micah Jensen, our Assistant Director of IT. He's been very, very busy with many AV and network upgrades across our district. many of these things have been in planning for the last year, and then everything kind of happens all at once. And he's just been project managing all of these different projects, including what you see here in our new boardroom and across the hall in the blue room. He's also been working on some projects at Old Vale Middle School. You know, Old Vale always needs upgrades. So we've been working on upgrading some of their networks, some of their network cabinets, their audio enhancement, and just a lot of things across their school. The Endrada video wall that was built when the school was built, and then that technology just needed to be replaced. So he's been working on that. And then if you've ever been to Savano and seen their outdoor NPR, it's really unique. It's our only outdoor NPR actually, and that needed a refresh. So he's been managing that project as well. Recognizing Micah Jensen again and Mark Mullins with all of our network upgrades we've been doing. Again, a lot of these projects got in the works last year. Everything arrives all at once. So we have switches to deploy across the entire district. They've been working hard on that. In fact, tonight we're doing a big upgrade on our network, a couple of our main network devices that are responsible for keeping all the 20,000 devices we have on our network every day getting to the internet in a safe way. We'll be upgrading that tonight in addition to bringing our transportation building onto its new fiber connection, so it's not dependent on Old Vale anymore. I'd also like to recognize a few folks who helped pull off a tech day that we had a few weeks ago. We rented a space downtown and had some PD. We brought in some folks from Phoenix to do some training and some other things. And we also had a few folks on our team do some trainings. I'd like to recognize Rita Boyd, Elaine Murphy, and Emily Marshall for leading up some of those. And then, of course, Janessa Weber for organizing that space for us and everything we needed to make the day successful. The end of last year, I brought to the board some work. We were going to start with our Vail Technology Common Values. We're starting to get close on that. Once we're wrapping that up, we'll bring that to the board here in the near future. And at that time, I'll recognize everybody that was involved in that. But I'd like to just recognize Norm Purdy, Micah Jensen, and Emily Marshall for helping to lead that effort with myself. And we're really excited to bring that to you. It's been fun community project in coordination with our staff and parents and teachers, and we're really excited to bring that to you. We think it's come a long way. Incentive programs and EEPs. I know you guys know about those, but now it's time to pay them out. So that's the important time of the year. We want to make sure everyone gets paid, and we have some folks that have been working hard to make sure all those things get approved and get to payroll. Again, Emily Marshall for helping to manage that with Janessa Weber, and then Jerry Comper in our payroll department. She just does an amazing job with all her spreadsheet magic and turning all those spreadsheets into actual money. So our teachers will be really pleased to get their well-deserved pay before the holiday break for half of the year. And then finally, I just want to recognize a couple of folks who presented a few weeks ago at the CIO CTO conference in Phoenix. It's a big statewide conference where K-12 tech directors get together and learn from each other and do share presentations on various things. Melissa Matias and Elaine Murphy both did a presentation on where Vail is with computer science and what we've been doing with that over the last 5 or 6 years, and focusing also on the Cyber Patriots program that Ms. Matias has really made successful. So those are all my recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Breen. Mr. Campos.
Hey, good evening, President Pratt, Superintendent Kruth, and members of the board. Well, I would like to recognize our fantastic specialist team we have at Acacia. So Nikki Biega, our art teacher, Hannah Wetchell, our music teacher, Andrew Abbott does STEM, Elizabeth Chesbrough is our PE teacher, and we have 2 library enrichment teachers. Linda Anderson does 3-5, and Amanda Rotz does our K2. And then not to leave off our librarian, Mrs. Gardner, who does a fantastic job checking in and out books and working all around our campus. We are so just thrilled to have specialists on our campus. We feel that's just such a great part of our campus, of our culture, and it gives different students an outlet into those specialists. We had a 2nd grade musical last week, which was phenomenal. It was great. It was a good time, and it was a packed house. So just seeing all of our parents come out to all of our performances and any kind of specialist day that we have is just, really positive for our campus and for our culture. And not only to mention our specialist team, but they also step in lunch duties and any kind of coverage that we need. They're always on the spot and really just rounding out our campus and our culture. So I wanted to make sure I gave them a lot of shine as well tonight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Campos. I have a few other district-wide recognitions I'd like to call attention to this evening. The first is Richard Gremmel, our Empire High School drama teacher, was awarded earlier this week the Arizona Teacher of the Year for the Arizona Thespians Southern Region. It was the second time Mr. Gremmel has been so honored. So huge kudos to him. Also, we learned last week that every year the University of Arizona, used to call the University of Arizona Circle K Teacher of the Year, but they do that in partnership with their U of A Athletics and their foundation. They name 9 high school Teacher of the Year finalists from a pool of candidates from across Pima County, and then they recognize those 9 at various basketball games throughout the U of A basketball games throughout the year, and then they are honored at a dinner and a reception, and a winner is chosen. Out of the 9, we had 4 of them from Vail. Empire High School teacher Michelle Tozer, Micah Mountain High School teacher Kim Farr, Andrada High School teacher Tiffany Newton, and Cienega High School teacher Christy Parks. Huge kudos to all of them. And lastly, this occurred between our last board meeting and this one, and we'll put this on as an inform item and a former study item at our next board meeting. But I just want to call attention to and recognize the fact that Arizona school district and district labels were released by the Arizona State Board of Education and Arizona Department of Education. And out of our 21 schools that are eligible to receive A labels, 20 of those received an A rating. 1 received a B rating to give us a district-wide GPA of 3.95. The one small school that serves our middle school students in a blended learning capacity is a B, and I know that we've got a great plan in place to get that to an A soon. But we're now the 2nd largest school district in Pima County. We serve over 14,600 students, and I'm pretty sure we're the largest school district in the state to be able to make the claim that we serve over 14,500 students in A-rated schools. Just a huge accomplishment for our parents, for our staff, and for our community. It was at a religious leaders luncheon earlier today, and turn that back around in that group, that trying to strengthen our community and what that looks like. It wouldn't happen without our community connections and without our partnership with parents. So just tremendous. That's all I have for staff, student, or community recognitions this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I also just want to say, I just love having these student groups come in. It just is a wonderful way to start our board meeting. So thank you for setting those up. Our next agenda item is call to the public and public requests to speak. At this time, I have one. Actually, I have one from Jennifer Maddox. Those wishing to address the governing board on items not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. Speakers are requested to hold their comments to 3 minutes. Call to the public will be, in accordance with Arizona open meeting law, board members may not respond, comment, or ask questions to speakers regarding the issues not on the agenda. Sometimes it's hard to feel like you're being heard when we can't ask questions, but I can follow up with you later.
Understood.
Thank you.
It's more or less just to enter this in the public record. It was brought to our attention during a recent election for Prop 402 that information out of the student direct, or out of the
So we'll move on to our correspondence and reports. Our first item is superintendent's report. Mr. Caruth.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. Just a note regarding our next governing board meeting on November 28th, that we will be canceling that meeting. Mrs. Pratt and myself will be out of town at that time for different reasons. I'll just disclose mine. Remember, my wife and I are traveling to see our daughter graduate from grad school. So we'll just be holding our next meeting and one meeting in December, which is December 12th. So just want to let folks know that in advance.
Thank you. Our next item are board reports. Do any board members wish to make a report at this time? I can see everyone. Mr. King, did you raise your hand? No. Okay, Mr. Buster. Okay.
Thank you. I did have the opportunity with Mr. Groot to go to see Copper Ridge Elementary School and visit with some educators, which was a phenomenal opportunity. We really have some really smart, talented, incredible educators that are taking care of our kids on a regular basis. And it was nice to sit down, break bread, hear their backgrounds, their stories, and what brought them into education, which was just absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you, Mr. Buster. Do you have yours up? Yeah, Mr. King, do you? Okay, go ahead, Mr. King.
All right, so I, since our last board meeting, I attended the Pantano's Trunk or Treat event. And it was great. I got to see all the staff, parents, kids enjoying the community event down there, and kind of give them kind of a safe place to go, right? And actually get out and kind of enjoy that community piece there as well. I'll show you pictures of my costume later. I also attended the Pro Family Legislators Conference in Irving, Texas. It was a great experience. I got to hear from other elected officials from around the country. The overarching premise of the conference was for legislators, but there were a lot of takeaways for education and advocacy areas for districts to work with their state and federal legislators, as well as some ideas that we could potentially implement here in the district or throughout the state, even through possibly ASBA. So I also attended last week. I attended new teacher induction. Day 5, so it's rolling along. There's a couple more days, so I was with some of the all path teachers there. It was great. It was great, but because I think they kind of expect to see me now too, because I do pop in. So and I sit there for the whole training. So and it's good. And Megan Nolan does a great job in facilitating the training. And there was always engagement. We were in this room, so we got to hear all the roof construction going on during the days. So that was fun. We also did site visits to Corona Foothills Middle School and Vale Academy. So we got to see some of the new things that were going on out there, as well as meet some of the teachers, staff, and just kind of get to see around the campuses. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. King. Other board reports, Ms. Anderson.
Yeah. So since our last board meeting, I got to attend Sienaga's advanced drama show. It's called Elsewhere. And it was just a joy to watch these kids. And what I didn't know that night is one of the adjudicators for the state thespians was there, and they were judging them, and they were chosen. They were one of 2 schools in the state that performed this weekend at the state thespian conference, which is where Mr. Grimmel received that award. So congratulations to him. So that was pretty awesome to see those kids perform their show and then be able to do that on the state level. I also got to go to Sienaga's dance showcase, and this is the first year where they have a full dance program at Sienega. And just congratulations to Stephanie Johnson and the work she's doing with that program. And it was just such a joy to see these students share through dance, and the parents and just those there to cheer them on. And I'm excited to see that program grow and just the work that she is doing and her energy. And so so that was awesome. And then I also got to do a reality check lunch at Cottonwood, and that was I always love sitting with staff and teachers and just getting to hear from them and get to know them a little bit better. So anyway, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other board reports? I've had just a really quick one. I went on the same tour as Mr. King and Ms. Tippett, actually, to Vale Academy in Corona Foothills.
I know I've mentioned it before, my measurement is always would I put my kid at this school? And at those site visits, I added another measurement for myself. If I was a teacher, would I teach at these schools? And the answer is yes. We just have amazing schools. So I just want to thank both the teachers, staff, and the leaders at both of those schools. I also attended the religious leaders meeting today. Just a great way to connect community and help solve problems. I appreciate that group a lot. I also want to recognize and thank the technology department for all the new equipment in the boardroom. I'm already just loving the sound, and I suspect that people who are watching online can hear better. I also, on a personal level, want to congratulate Mr. King. I received a book in the mail. I ordered his book that he just wrote, and so I received that, and so it was fun to show that to my kids, so congratulations. All right, if there's no other board reports, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There'll be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. Do any board members wish to pull an item? No. Okay. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. It's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. King and Mr. Buster, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. We'll move on to our old business section. The first and only item is the governing board, governing board goals, also an action item. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. This is actually an item for you all, so be thinking about which one of you wants to make the recommendation here. But I'll maybe provide just a bit more background, frankly, because I think it's worth noting and writing on a bit. The board goals that have been developed and put forth by the board were done so in collaboration over several meetings and retreats dating back to almost a year ago in January, working on them this summer and then polishing them in another retreat. And then we sat down and polished them a little bit more. And I just think that they're when I look around the country today and a lot of the contention that's happening in board rooms across the country, that seems to be more publicized than what happens in boardrooms when things are going well. And I just applaud this board for putting forth goals that are really intended to model behavior and intended to provide behavioral guardrails, ballast points, whatever you want to ascribe to them on how we'll treat each other, how you will treat each other. So that's primarily what they are, the board goals, and I'll just read them. As first, to place a priority on building trust. 2, to uphold board norms. 3, that meeting agendas and public discussion reflect the focus on district goals, which happens to be another agenda item later tonight. And then to make it a priority to be at important functions across the district, including all staff, FEL Pride Day, reality check luncheons, graduations, and site visits. There's another list of actions to be accomplished. I won't read those, but just prioritize the goals. You know, we're human. We're all human. So perfection isn't the goal. The goal is to strive to continue to strive to do things well. And I just applaud you all for putting forth things that you can strive for, that we can strive for, and that models the rest of the staff and the community what we should be doing. So with that, I'll turn it over to one of you to make a recommendation amongst yourselves, see whether you want to codify this or not.
Madam President, I make the motion to approve the governing board goals as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Anderson seconds. Comments or questions? Ms. Tibbet.
I really appreciated the process that we went through to come up with our goals, and it was quite a bit of time spent building into those board norms and ensuring that we codify in a goal what those things that we are intending and striving for. as a governing board for the Bell School District. And I'm grateful to be doing this work alongside each of you. And grateful to be in this really amazing work of serving our entire community and specifically parents and families in our community. So I'm grateful for our goals. I like them.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Buster?
I'm really grateful for this board in regards to how we treat each other. We treat each other with a great deal of respect, honesty, and integrity, whether it be before the public or behind closed doors. And inevitably, leadership by example, I think, is one of those things, as Mr. Caruth iterated earlier, is kind of lacking throughout the country, even the world today. And I'm glad that this board does on a regular, consistent basis, lead by example. So this is a great step in the right direction, representing our phenomenal community.
Thank you, Mr. Buster. Mr. King?
I really hadn't planned on saying anything, but I want to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Buster said and what Ms. Tippett said, in that we did come together and we were very intentional and very deliberate when we crafted these goals. And there's been times over the last few years where people have said, "Oh, this is just a rubber stamp board," and that's probably the furthest thing from the truth. We have study sessions more often than not. We've gone into retreats and had additional meetings, and there's been agreements and disagreements, and it's anything but a rubber stamp session. So I do want to say thank you in that, having attended board meetings from around the state and seeing how detrimental or toxic other boards can be, I am extremely thankful for this board and the staff of this district in actually doing the hard work getting along.
Thank you. Any other comments? I agree with what's been said. I think you've really summed it up well. I just will echo and just say it's always a huge pleasure and blessing to be able to work alongside each of you. So thank you for the sacrifice of time that each of us, I guess, put in to build these. So with that, if there's no other comments or questions, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to new business. The first item is the 2023-24 and 2024-25 district goals. This is a study item, Mr. Caruth.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. Mrs. Penn.
Shouldn't have touched that. Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, and members of the board. Before I present the goals, the district goals, I would just like to add to the conversation of how wonderful it is to work with each of you and how blessed we are for the example and the leadership that we provide. The district goals is an outgrowth of that leadership. Although they are separate from the board goals, they are goals that provide guidance, direction, and the stamp of what is important for us to work towards. We have a long history of coming together and creating district goals. We have two priorities that have been set forth to all of our staff. And recently those priorities have been held up together in unison of our high academic achievement and the importance of our healthy, dynamic relationships. We have had the privilege of serving as a lighthouse district for many years now, and we see that work through beyond textbooks and through the impact that we have been able to make for the education of students all across the state and in states outside of Arizona. And our goals that we're bringing forward for study reflect those priorities. We have an academic goal that is to maintain a district GPA of at least 3.75. We're blessed with that 3.95 this year. And I can tell you every single one of our principals strives to have their school be an A school. We also have been working for 20 years under the conditions of having most of our schools be A schools. And that is who we are. That is what our priority is. And we know that just as this year, as an example, we have one school that is a B, and it has a great plan in place and was an A last year and will likely return to that A status next year. We know that maintaining every single school as an A, although that is our ultimate goal, it is also a very, very difficult thing to do. So we have built in a little bit of room for the reality of our district to allow some space for a B school now and then, with that high expectation of that 3.75. This is worded a little bit differently from what we've had previously, where we had the goal of each school being an A or a B. This is moving towards the focus of what the district as a whole represents, rather than the focus on each individual school. We worked very, very closely with our site administrators and have their full support on this language. Another goal that you'll see that is new this year is bringing into the forefront the importance of relationships. And for the first time, we have a relationship goal. We again worked very closely with our site administrators to make sure that it was something that they were very comfortable with. And you'll see that it is a menu option, and it has two pieces. It has the menu of things that we would like to see at our sites, and then it also has a menu of things that we are holding up as what we want to see from district office and how we can be at sites and supporting them. So I know you have a copy of that in front of you. There are some of those that we're looking at to have specific numbers. So for example, 20 of our 22 schools building their tier 1 or tier 2 interventions for PBIS at each site. We also have, we want to have at least 4 per year meetings of our leadership team that we're holding outside of the district office, and we go to a site to do that. We had one of them today. Margaret Stewart at Corona Foothills hosted our leadership team. It was absolutely wonderful to be on her campus and to do our meeting in that environment. And then finally, we have our lighthouse goal. You've probably seen this in the past as a BT goal. We wanted to transition the language to highlight the purpose of the goal, which is to live out our function as a lighthouse district in this state and across. So that is again a menu. It's very similar to last year. There's just been a little bit of adjustment in what those menu items are. Principals at each site have been working with us to finalize the language on that goal as well. So the final thing I want to draw your attention to is that this is the first year that we've brought goals forward with a 2-year window. We recognize that bringing those goals in November is late into the year, and yet that has been kind of the cycle that we've been in, waiting for the school label results. And we had the conversation that we really know that this is the direction that that is important to us. It's part of our values, and that if we have a 2-year goal, we can revisit it each year, make sure that as we move into the new year, it so represents what we are holding as those values, but it allows principals to know that that is the direction as they are starting up the school year, and it just kind of aligns the flow of the development of goals just a little bit better for us.
Thank you. This is a study item, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions, Ms. Tippett?
Yeah, the academic goal and the lighthouse goal both have kind of measurable outcomes. I'm wondering around the relationship goal. What is the measure?
Great question, Mr. Cruz.
I'm gonna hand this off to Mrs. Penn here in 2 seconds, other than to say that's a really hard thing to measure. And we had a lot of conversation about what that looks like in a specific piece. So that said, it was important for us because to recognize the importance of relationships and the quality of relationships as a foundational piece to academic success. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Penn for
Thank you.
details.
President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. We had so many conversations about how to craft a measurable goal. And you'll notice that there are a few places on the menu that provide a place for a measurable goal. We can look at those numbers specifically. What our conversations were about was that relationships are such an important piece, and they should be authentic. And that once we start putting a really hard number on a really specific action, then it just starts to feel forced rather than authentic, and that would likely have a detrimental effect on the relationships and be the opposite of what we were wanting. So we're trying to hold it up as a value, and have some specifics on what we're looking for, but give it room to be authentic and have those actions around building relationship be authentic so that it actually does support the development of the relationships.
You follow up? Go ahead.
So I like that. I'm on board. But with the menu, is that some sites might be doing one of those things and others might be doing 5, or talk to me about the menu.
Mr. Cruz?
Mrs. Penn.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, most of the sites will be doing all of those. Also, as it is the first time we've had a relationship goal, there is a little bit more vagueness to it. And we, as much as we love being able to measure everything, we wanted to find a good starting place and build some success. And so what we intentionally allowed a bit of vagueness here so that we could start down the path of figuring out the best way to have a relationship goal without forcing into places where people were feeling uncomfortable.
Okay.
You good? Other comments or questions? I just want to comment that I was super excited to see that both that academic piece and the relationship piece. It took me back to Mr. Cruz's all staff messages, I think from last year, correct? And just how important both of those are together. So thank you so much for this. My only question is the 2 that you were saying, 20 out of the 22 sites. I was wondering if that was a like room in case 2 didn't meet the goal, or if it's specifically there's 2 sites that are not going to do that, if that makes sense. Yeah, Mr. Cruz.
Mrs. Penn.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, it's actually a combination of that. To my knowledge, there is 1 site that is not going to be doing that, and then the other space is space, just
in
space.
case. Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Pitt?
Just an overall comment. Just this represents a new structure to goals, and I think a real refresh of a look at our district goals. And so sometimes things become a routine, and I feel like this is just a breath of fresh air. I love that we broke it out into academic relationship and lighthouse goals, and that we're honoring that lighthouse role that we have in providing opportunities for students outside of the Bell School District. And making things better for all students. And I also love the idea of doing the 2-year goal, and kind of looking a little further into the future and allowing our sites to start the year off knowing exactly where, as an organization, we want to be. I just wanted to comment on that.
Really great insight. Thank you, Ms. Tippett. Ms. Anderson?
So under the district admin menu, reality check lunches, how many are going on right now? This says 8 per year.
Good question, Mr. Crew. Actually, Ms. Peterson.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yeah.
The keeper of reality check.
So she's saying that they're right here in the goals, it says 8 reality check lunches per year, but it seems like we do more. I think each site is one for each site. Okay. Perfect. So there's quite a bit of wiggle room on that one. Right. Want to follow it?
I just thought, I was wondering why eight was on there when we, I think, do go to.
We were just, I think that's for us, for me specifically, not for the board. So, I mean, although I attend more, it's just, how does Mrs. Penn or Mr. Carney get around to some of the others? Mrs. Penn.
And President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, it is also to reflect that we're in November and to have one for each.
We're 2/3 of the way
We're
through. 1/3.
2/3 of the way through. So the idea would be that there would be at least 8 in moving forward.
For the rest of the
For
school
the rest
year.
of this year.
So this is for the rest of the school year, even though where's the 2-year? I guess that's been.
Honestly, I thank you for bringing it to my attention. I've looked at this many times. We're fine with adjusting that up. It was more the issue of what it was versus the number. Our intention every year is to do 26 or 27 reality check lunches. So it's roughly there's 36 weeks in the school year.
Okay.
So we're other than the first few weeks at the beginning and first few weeks at the end, we're doing a reality check lunch a week.
Okay.
So somewhere in that ballpark. The day I know I don't have to pack a lunch.
So then site visits, what does that, because obviously it just says site visits, what does that entail? What do you see, what does that look like?
So from my standpoint, from kind of, I would say the superintendent's office standpoint, so myself, Mrs. Penn, Mr. Carney, and others, how are we intentionally getting onto sites and what does that look like? Whether that's in some cases reality check lunches for me, Mrs. Penn going and doing classroom walkthroughs and other things, or Mr. Carney doing those things. And also frankly, just a call for our other directors in the building to just make sure that we're intentionally getting into schools and doing things. We made a change as an example for our leadership meeting, frankly, as a result of doing these goals. We have been over the last many years holding our leadership meetings across the hall in the blue room. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to be holding those at sites. We did our leadership meeting in the Corona Foothills this morning. So we're going to be rotating around to sites. I don't know if we'll do that every time, but pretty close. And that just gave, in this case, Mrs. Stewart an opportunity to talk about her school to all of us, to those of us who are in the room who aren't on that site, to spend some time there. So how are we intentionally engaging sites and being there? It could be it's a variety of ways, but one of the things we've talked about a lot as a group of people who work not at a school site is not to lose sight, not to lose our focus that is what we serve, and that's what we're here to support. So how are we getting out and doing that?
And so to clarify, this doesn't include the board going on the site visits.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just kind of want to know what that looked like. And can I just comment, I actually love, I guess what you said also, I love that you guys are doing leadership meetings on the sites because I know what it has been like for me. Obviously this is my first year, but just going on to these sites and doing the site visits that we do, what a difference that makes. And so I think it's great that the leadership teams are, I think are going to the different sites. Because as a parent, I've been on a lot of sites, but it's been great to see the others. So anyway, okay, I love that. Thank you.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruth, and members of the board, one of the other pieces I'd like to add to the conversation on that is that each of us going onto a site, that visit might look a little different. If I'm going on site, I will likely be walking through classrooms, perhaps leaving a note for a teacher, or having kind of that instructional kind of focus and interaction. If Miss Dabney is on the site, her visit may look different, and she may be visiting with different people than I would. So we didn't have one recipe for what a site visit looked like. And the other thing I'd like to just mention to the board is that when we were talking to principals, they were very eager to have us on site and talked about what a morale boost that is for staff. So just what they were asking for is just our presence.
So some of the surveys that, I read through, I think, so I like hearing that, because I think it's needed and wanted, right? I mean, that's the feedback I'm sure you're seeing. So thank you for doing that. I just think this is about kids, right? And how we support kids is also through our staff. And so thank you.
Really good discussion. Any other comments or questions? No. Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Penn. We'll move on to an enrollment update and also an inform item. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. We spent time in a study session going through where we are with enrollment. So I'm going to have just ask that Mr. Hurley walk through that same presentation in the regular meeting. Just we don't stream our study sessions, and just want to make sure that those people who may be watching are also, not that our study sessions aren't open to the public too, but it just wanted to make sure we're being transparent with this. November is a time period when we can, it's probably one of the earliest time periods where we can have the first stable look at where we are currently with our enrollment for this school year, and also begin to make some early projections about what next year might look like. So, Mr. Hurley.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruth, members of the board. I want to start out real quick by just acknowledging that Dr. Nikki Callis is in the room. 20 some years ago, when we started doing comprehensive high schools, we didn't talk about all these A+ visits and these 3.95 GPAs. This was not the school district that I showed up for. And she had a large part in taking us young kids and teaching us what it meant to be professional and passionate and having heart for kids. And her fingerprints are all over things that we do in high school. So I just wanted to thank her for what she did. It's really great to see you. All right. All right. But enrollment, not nearly as fun as talking about PQ. Like I said, I've been here 21 years, and we had a really exciting enrollment update that had never happened in my time before. We had I'm gonna hit this, right? It's gonna go. A new enrollee this morning. We had a badger show up at the district office. We did deny its open enrollment. It's had too many needs that we were not excited about. I decided to share a picture of you being cute and adorable and walking across the parking lot instead of eating the meal that it was eating right out of.
I don't want the business end of that thing, though.
Yes. Those claws are not very friendly, but yeah, it was right here at the district office. We've had lots of critters here, but this was the first one. So quite a start to the day. Just wanted to, real quickly, this is just kind of a current state of affairs, and this is where we are. And what you can see is it slowly ticks up as a general rule from kindergarten up through high school. We do have a large group of high school students, as sometimes happens, you have larger groups. So high school is really where our bulge is right now in this situation. It's going to work its way through, but there's a large number of kids working their way through there. The other interesting one is just kindergarten, that second grade, those were the kinders the year after COVID. So we talked about, there were a lot of families that just decided to wait one more year. So we had a real big growth in kinders. I don't think it was anything other than that, but it is about 250 kids bigger than the group behind it. And then the next two kinder groups have really kind of flattened out. So that's something we'll talk about a little bit, but really kind of hovered there at about that 890 student mark. We do, like I said, we do kind of grow kids as they work through the system. So this shows a 2-year average since COVID. Our kinders, when they become first graders, there's about 30 more of them. And our fourth graders, when they become fifth graders, there's about 55 more of them. We have a large jump there from 8th to 9th grade. And you're going to see a little bit later an open enrollment number. So I will just let you know right now, cut to the chase, that is not a growth in open enrollment numbers. That is mostly a growth in families that live in our districts and chose to do K-8 somewhere else. So the vast majority of that growth is families that were doing homeschool or charters or private schools and decided to come back for us for high school. So that was really exciting to see. That's about 3 or 4 years now. We've had a pretty steady since we've opened Micah Mountain. It gave us enough flexibility and room to really let those families come back. So that's been good. But there is a general kind of every year we get a little bit bigger by each grade level. This is the chart that shows really that growth. It starts there, that 5,000 students. That's about the year we opened Cienega. That's when I came, and you can see in 7 years there, we literally doubled. We went from 5,000 to 10,000. There were growing pains. There were schools opening. There was a time, I think, when Sycamore had 900, almost 1,000 kids. I mean, there were crazy things that happened during that time. But what you'll see is that in the last 15 years since then, we have not doubled. We have not added 5,000 students since. So while we're still very fortunate to be growing, we are not growing at the pace that we were growing at in the 2000s. Then one of the things that we work on really hard with the principals and the business office is projections. And we make our projections January to January. So this January, we will formalize what our projections are for the next year. The green bar you can see is that's the good news. The good news is we're about 80 over where we think we're supposed to be in January. We will have some families move out, and especially some of those senior numbers will probably drop out during the Christmas break. But we're still pretty confident that we are going to end up being a little bit over projection, right? The ultimate goal would be to be perfectly zero across there. That means every school was funded exactly as it should be, and we were all happy. But if I think we're going to end up being within like 0.5% or 1/3%, which is crazy. The kindergarten run really is the most difficult to determine. We can look at historical data and find out how many first graders become second graders. But to look around a neighborhood and wonder how many parents are going to bring us their kindergartners is really, really difficult. We started some marketing last year and we were hopeful that it would drive some numbers. It did drive numbers. I'll show you that in just a second, but it wasn't quite enough to the numbers we wanted it to be. So that'll be something that Mr. Wood and I and principals adjust on next year and figure out what is a more realistic number for kindergartners. It's something that we realize the sooner we can get kids in, the better. So it's an area that we're going to spend some focus on moving forward, but kind of this is how things work. Some grades are over, some grades are under, some schools are a little over, some schools are a little under. But when we look across the system, to have 15,000 students and end up being within probably 50 or 60 at the end is really kind of exciting and good news. This is an interesting chart. The red numbers are our 12th graders all the way back to 2011. The blue numbers are our kinders. So prior to 2013, we actually had more kids in kindergarten than we had 12th graders, which is kind of crazy to think about. But as we talked about before, they're just kind of growing a little bit, 20 and 30 and 40 per grade level. And so what's happened is that gap has started to widen and widen and widen. You can see that big bump in 2021 for kinders that went up there because of the COVID return. But if we do this, this is really more of a chart that shows kind of the pace that those are on. So it's really exciting that we continue to grow kids from first to second and second to third and all of those things. But what that's creating is a large gap. Every year we're going to graduate 1,200 seniors and we bring in 900 kindergartners, which means during that year we have to grow 300 new students just to stay flat. And a couple of years ago that number was 50, and then it was 100, and then 150, and last year it was 200. And the coming years it's going to be a 300 student gap. So it's addressing the number of kindergartners coming in is something that we're interested in doing and trying to make sure that we get some of those families maybe that chose to come somewhere else to stay in their home district and to be here. It's also one of the reasons we try to offer as many choices as we can. If you're a kindergarten parent, you can choose a K-8 school or a neighborhood school or a K-12 school. You can choose Savano's community school. You can choose online school. So we try to give parents as many choices as they can. And we're just going to really keep the information and the marketing and the planning and trying to do some more kinder fairs and do some connections with preschools to really let people know all the great things that are happening in kindergarten. You look at that dip there in 2018, that's worth talking about. So in 2018, you see that our kindergartens actually from 16 to 17 to 18 got smaller every year. That was the year that the board approved. 2018 was approved for us to go to full day kindergarten. So even though the state doesn't fund us with full day kindergarten, it was pretty clear that our parents were telling us they wanted their students in a full day kindergarten. And so since we've made that move, we jumped from the 760 kid range to 900 kids every year. So it's really been good to see that we were able to give the parents what they wanted, which was a full day kinder option. This is what I talked to you about with percent open enrollment. So the 9th grade, there was that little tick up, from 5% in 8th grade to maybe 7%, but 2% of 1,300 students is not a huge number of students. What we did see last year, though, and it's important to remember that as kindergarten stayed even basically 2 years in a row, part of the reason it stayed even was we brought in about 30 some extra open enrollment kindergartners. If there's a time to bring in open enrollment students, it's that kindergarten year. That's when we know exactly how many seats are on the airplane and how many spots are available. And then they're with us and their cohorts and their friends and their PTSAs all the way through their career. So it's another thing that we'll continue to focus on, which is getting them in as many kindergartners as we can to fill the plane seats. All right, that's it. Kind of the takeaways is that we are still growing year over year. 2nd graders, there'll be more of them next year when they're in 3rd grade, and that goes all the way up through the system until we get to high school. Our projections really came out really good. Michelle Quiros and her business office are very happy that we are actually going to get enough money to pay what we thought we were going to pay, which is great. And then just that reminder that we keep having more seniors leave than kinders that we bring in. So we need to focus on how we can lessen that gap. That's all I got for you. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hurley. For questions, just want to add a couple of pieces to some of to the takeaways and great summary. One of the key differences between now and 21 years ago when Mr. Hurley arrived here is what a school district boundary looks like, what enrollment looks like across schools, and frankly, what parent choice looks like. Arizona leads the nation in parent choice in regards to educational options. We've been a district that's embraced that for a long time, and it's one of the reasons we have such a wide variety of kinds of schools, because we recognize that parents, a particular school doesn't meet every child's needs. But fundamentally, what's also changed is district boundaries are really don't exist any longer as far as where kids want to go. The law has changed, so if schools have capacity, we have to take students regardless of what school district they're in. When I started in education in Arizona, that was not the case. You could not take a student from another school district. You couldn't get funding for that kid. That's completely changed. And so I think that is one of the very biggest things, that the notion of where you live in regards to what your school district is just not what it used to be. Certainly not when we were kids growing up. So what that also means is we just need to embrace the notion of choice, and this is a continuation of that. And when we look at our roughly 7.5% to 8% across our district out of district open enrollment, we also need to understand and recognize that we probably have about 10% or maybe more of our families who live in the Vail School District who are choosing an educational option, either in a neighboring school district or a different school choice. So it's just part of the nature of the flow of things, and I think that's something we just need to be mindful of as we move forward. The other piece, Mr. Hurley has it up there, and we're still growing. That's great news for us. I will tell you, we're an anomaly as a school district, and frankly, as a school system, because of declining birth rates. There just aren't as many children. Pima County is growing slightly, but the number of annual births are declining. There's just fewer kids, and I know our neighboring school districts are either flat growth or declining growth. Don't have the exact numbers on all the charter school systems, but I know when speaking to some charter school operators, it's a similar trend. So we're in good shape. And this is really just a matter of what is as far as where we are. We're also in good shape because we see a lot of new houses being built in our community, so that also helps. So part of this is just paying attention to the conditions that are in front of us and making some slight adjustments to the conditions that are in front of us. And largely we've been able to do that, and this is part of paying attention to the information and the data that we have to be able to make those adjustments. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Ms. Tippett?
So just for like a real simplification, clarification. We're expecting to be about 100 students more than what we projected at January of 2024. Is that correct?
Mr. Cruz?
Mr. Hurley. President Pratt, Mr. Cruz. Members of the board, yeah, probably more like 50 once things settle down. So yeah, I think we'll probably be about 50 students above what our projections.
And to be clear, there our January projections year over year were about 150 above where they were last year. So we'll be about 200 students above where we were last January.
Any other comments or questions? You know, we went over this for over an hour during our study session, so really a lot of great information, and thanks for taking the time to answer all of our questions during that time. If there's no other comments or questions, we will go on to the next item, our A+ School of Excellence site visits, also an inform item. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. Just thought put this on the agenda for a couple of reasons. One, it's really exciting that we have 7 schools that are up for site visits from the Arizona Education Foundation for an A+ School of Excellence Award. That's last year. To put this in context, we had 2, but I also wanted to put it on the agenda because I recognize that Mrs. Anderson and Mr. Buster this is the first year on the board and going through this process, and don't want to assume when we talk about A+ Schools of Excellence, you understand what that means. And it's just a good reminder in general to our community. So the Arizona Education Foundation is an independent foundation that provides many programs across Arizona. Some of the ones that they're most known for are doing the Arizona Teacher of the Year. So that's one of the things they do. They also do the Arizona Spelling Bee. Is that another function that runs through them? And then probably their other largest process that they do is the Arizona A+ School of Excellence, which is a very rigorous process that requires a very detailed and specific application be completed, that you need to describe the programs that are on your campus, the evidence that those programs are effective. Only schools that are A and B rated can even be considered for an A+ School of Excellence. I've read many of our A+ applications, and I don't think I've ever read one that's fewer than 20 pages long. It usually takes staff who compile that a good 6 months to pull those applications together. And the staff who go through that process, one of the reasons they bang their head against the wall to do that is that it's a reflective process that also helps them refine and improve their practices. So of the many ways that our schools are rated, and I spoke earlier in the board meeting about receiving A labels from the Arizona Department of Ed, this is just another marker and indicator, I would say much more comprehensive in nature than looking at student achievement more solely through the student achievement lens, because you not only have to go through the rigor of the application. If you are selected, and there's not a guarantee that you'll be selected for a site visit, then you're visited by a group of people, mostly comprised of A+ winner people who run other A+ schools, and they look for evidence of what you put in your application. You need to demonstrate that, and those visits can take at a minimum 1 day, sometimes up to 2 days. And just so you know, on average, only 50 schools in Arizona receive that designation every year. And I just, I think it's worth noting, one, the time and effort that in this year alone, these 7 schools, which are Cienega High School, Mesquite Elementary, Vail Academy and High School, Desert Willow Elementary School, and Acacia Elementary School, have put forth over the last 6 to 9 months, getting that application ready to go. Now they're getting ready to receive visits from the judges, and we'll need to prove they have what they said they had in their applications before, and Esmond Station, Acacia, Empire, and Esmond Station are also on that list, excuse me. They have to prove what's on those applications, and it's no guarantee that just because you get a site visit that you get an A+ award. So just kind of a time to pause and recognize that. We have over the years, had a total of 36 A+ schools, and you can reapply every 5 years. If all of these are awarded A+, that'll be 43. Moving forward, there are some other criteria besides needing to be an A or a B school. The school must be open at least 5 years, so it can't be a brand new school. And the principal, whoever the principal is, must be in their role for their 3rd year. So you can't do it in the 1st or 2nd year of being a principal. So we've got a number of schools that are eligible again by the year, but because we've switched principals within that time period, they're not eligible. And Micah Mountain's not eligible yet as it is either. So anyways, just wanted to bring that forward. It's pretty stunning, honestly, to have that number, and it's just another indicator of good things that are happening in our schools. Happy to answer any other questions or phone a friend in the audience who's gone through the process to help with a question that I can't answer.
Thank you. Comments or questions, Ms. Anderson?
So for all of these except Esmond Station, they're kind of like, this is they've had A+ before, this is Esmond's first time? Are all the others ones that are applying again?
Good question, Mr. Kruth.
Good question. Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board, and Mrs. Anderson. I believe Esmond Station has done it once before.
This is Esmond's first.
This is Esmond's first time.
It's the first year that Esmond's eligible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there you go. Mrs. Pratt would know. I told you I'm running for it.
So,
and that's because we've switched principals. Yeah.
So the other ones, I think, just clarifying, the other ones have.
This is their.
They have all received it in the past. Mr. Barger, does that include Vail Academy and High School? Yeah. Yes. What schools that have not submitted previously are Andrada, Copper Ridge, Savannah, Micah Mountain, and Rincon Vista. Most of those are due to just the nature of the, not because they don't want to, but just because we've had change in leadership at those schools over those time period. So yeah, it's good to see, Rincon Vista Rincon Vista is the only other one, or will be up there next year. Excuse me, they will be there next year. I think they're intending to.
I think, does he have Andrada? Is it one more year?
Next year.
Next year would be, okay. Mr. Buster, do you still have a question?
Yes, in regards to having 7 go up this year, is that a record number of schools for the district?
Very good question.
That is a very good question, and thanks to Mr. Carney for providing all the background information. Yes, I believe that is a record. I think we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 5 schools before, but never 7.
Amazing.
Wow.
Really good question. Ms. Tippett.
Sometimes I kind of wonder if there's just kind of a blurring between A+ and A letter grades. I think, I don't know, I think some people think it's just all the same thing rather than 2 different designations, and that both really deserve recognition and praise, because these aren't rubber stamp opportunities, either one.
No.
They're both things that have to be worked really hard for. And so I appreciated that you kind of outlined kind of the different pieces of the rigorous process for the A+. I also really appreciate the intentional effort to go through this process. It is a lot of work. It's refining work. And it's something that communicates really well to our community and to our parents, that we place excellence as a priority. We hold ourselves to high expectations, and we're willing to do the work to ensure that we can prove it. So, thanks for the extra detail.
Thank you, Ms. Tippett. Go ahead, Mr.
One other, pull a thread a little further from what Mrs. Tippett said. One of the other great benefits of being named an A+ plus school is the ability to become an A plus judge, then allows our staff to then go visit other really high quality schools across Arizona and see what they're doing. And kind of level set where we are with them and steal ideas. I know the judges that come to us, they often, I mean, they're principals in other schools and other districts across Arizona, and the conversations, aside from looking at the applications and verifying that in fact what's in the application is they're seeing evidence of that, is often around sharing ideas and practices. And so as much as anything, it is the intent and intention of our staff when they go through this process to be better. And the A plus on the as an outcome is a really nice and wonderful recognition, but from the outset of writing and attempting the application process is really a school-wide professional development opportunity. I mean, they engage in staff meetings, they engage in cataloging of what's happening. Is this rigorous enough? Is this what this looks like? So it's a really good process. That's why we go through it. And yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Buster.
Traditionally, especially since this is our first year, inevitably, if each one of these schools, all 7 or even one of these schools, is a great honor for the school district as a whole, but more importantly for the schools, the principals, the educators, staff, and of course our students. What does the administration do, as well as what does the board do to celebrate these wins?
Really good question, Mr. Cruz.
We dance and we sing and we have shirts.
Yes, board members have to do the dance.
Yeah. Mr. Buster. We will, if and when all 7 of these schools receive a call that they have received the A plus designation, they immediately kick into gear to plan celebration. And we publicize that. And the other, it's just so fun that every time we do this, to one, just the pride that the staff and the parents and the community of that school show in showing off their school and being proud about that. 2, you look at it in the audience, and almost every administrator, if they're able, certainly if they're able, they're there to support their colleagues and their friends and what that looks like. And we plaster up the banner and we shot it from all of our social media platforms. It is difficult, as Mrs. Tippett said, to kind of cut through the understanding of what an A plus designation means and what an A rating from the Department of Ed means. What does, an A rating from the niche, group mean? We're mindful of our purpose, which is to create really high quality school environments where parents can send their children and where those children can thrive. That's our purpose. That's our mission statement. And in shorthand, these are just affirmations and through a variety of ways that there's evidence that those things are happening in our schools.
And if I may follow up, would we be able to go ahead and celebrate all of these outstanding educators and of course principals out there, and of course our students, because they are the catalyst toward this success at Vail Pride Day?
Good suggestion. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, Mrs. Pratt. Mr. Buster, I will need to look, it's in the board background, so let me pop back over there when their visits are. I think we wrap up visits before Vail Pride Day, so it'll just be a matter of, do we get the calls back? I can't remember when they make those phone calls, because they wait until after they do all the visits before they make the phone calls. Does anyone in the audience know what the time frame is roughly from your memory? Mrs. Dabney?
There's a judges meeting that occurs for all of the judges, all of the cycles. It's better. And basically the process, the judges explain the visit and if they believe that the before, and then all of the judges agree. So that meeting has to occur first.
Yeah, it may be after Vail. My memory is it's in early March. We usually know, we know before spring break, but often not before that.
Just to add, Mr. Buster, the A plus celebrations are a huge deal. They all board members are invited, typically most attend, and a lot of times all the students have a t-shirt, you know, like made just for that celebration. I mean, it's a pretty big deal. Yeah, like Mr. Kruth was saying, administration will come, sometimes past principals, parents are invited. So it's a pretty cool celebration.
Well, I, for one, am excited about extending my wardrobe, so cool down.
You might have to create a little more space in your t-shirt drawer, Mr. Lester.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. Ms. Tippett?
I think probably one of my favorite things about the celebrations is just watching the kiddos as they listen to the adults and they feel the energy and they do their cheers. It's like the feeling of being A+ just sinks down into their bones, and they get to be A+. Not just the place they go to school, they do. You know what I mean? And it's so great for kids to be able to take on that identity and really grow into it. You know, it's really fun to watch that part of the celebration as the kids fun and joy in it. But just a quick question: How does A+ differ from National Blue Ribbon as far as like rigor?
Good question, Mr. Kruth.
That's a really good question. Of all of the ratings that we received, the A+ School of Excellence is the most rigorous process by far that we go through as far as determining what's happening on campus and the quality of what's happening on campus by far. Well, I should all the time. I mean, everything we do every day in a classroom is intended that children will learn, and they growth, when they grow from where they are to where they end up in the school year, is evidence of learning. And when they demonstrate that on assessments, that's evidence that they've learned, right? So I would say that evidence through our school labels, that through the Arizona Department of Ed, is also really rigorous because we put so much time and effort into that. That's our core mission. So those things are two. The National Blue Ribbon Award is a designation that's given by the Arizona Department of Ed nominates National Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence based on a variety of whatever they deem are the qualities that they want to lift up. Usually achievement is a large part of that, whether it's achievement of all students or whether it's achievements of certain students in subgroups. And then they submit that to the U.S. Department of Education. The U.S. Department of Education makes the nominations. At my little year sabbatical at the Department of Ed, I was actually shocked at the process of how that is selected. When I walked into a cubicle of an intern who said, "Oh, I'm working on the National Blue Ribbon." I was like, "Oh, you are? What's the rigor you're doing?" It's like, "Well, I'm looking at this checklist and I'm looking through these, and these are the schools I'm going to nominate." I'm like, "Your checklist? Do you know what this is like on the other side of the fence for the people who receive this thing?" So we fixed that. We put in, so I don't know whether it's still being used, but the time that I was there and subsequent time that administration was here, I knew that they employed that, which included looking at what students were growing in the subgroups of how students were growing relative to the performance on tests and relative to their peers. So, and since you open that, I can walk through the segue. I'll be leaving tomorrow to fly to Washington to celebrate City Valley being National Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, which was great, put forward under the criteria I described.
Great questions. Any other comments or questions? I just think it's amazing that this isn't something that's a requirement. I mean, I think there's a lot of pressure in Vail to do these, but this is something that a principal would choose to jump into. And just, I know just in conversations how big of a task this is. And it's not just the principal. I know that there's lots of site leaders that are teachers and educators that are helping do that. I remember many years ago, as a parent, I did one of the visits at Acacia. And I remember feeling, they were, like you were saying, they kind of want to verify, okay, is this really what's on the application? And I remember feeling like as a parent, like, yeah, this is a great place to be, and just feeling like you were saying, that ownership and pride of my site, even though I was just a parent, that you feel like you are contributing and you feel proud of your site. So anyway, kudos to each one of these sites who put in all of that work, and super excited for each of the visits. So if there's no other comments or questions, you're good? Okay. We will go to our next agenda item, which is an executive session. Mr. Cruz? No, board. Okay, I'll accept a motion.
Madam President, I make a motion that we go into executive session in accordance with ARS 38-431-03.A.1. The board may enter executive session for the discussion of or consideration of employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, dismissal, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of a public officer, appointee or employee of a public body, except that with the exception of salary discussions, the officer, appointee, or employee may demand that the discussion or consideration occur at a public meeting.
Seconded as presented.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buster. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. I suggest that we take a 10-minute recess before we go into executive session. Thank you.